Welcome to part 3 of our Reddit clone, and today we will be finishing the build of our Reddit clone. And before we get into it, I want to give a shout out to Scout APM for sponsoring this video. Now you can check out their link in the description below and get a 14-day free trial. So Scout APM makes it easy for you to track performance issues in your code and eliminate N+1 queries and many other issues that we encounter when we build Rails apps. So getting into our application now, I want to take things a little bit further. So we've created this upvotes and downvotes in our posts table. So this is an integer value. It defaults to 0, but we want to be able to increase this and decrease this based on the user's action. So let's begin by creating a new migration. And this migration will be used to create a votes table in our database. So in here we want to capture the account ID. So that would be a reference to the account ID. And we'll also capture the post ID. And we'll also capture a Boolean value, so that's a true or false value. And this will be for the upvote. So if the value is true, then it's an upvote. And if it's false, then it is a downvote. And then finally, we will capture the timestamps to record when that vote was made. So we will create a new file for our vote model. So a vote will belong to an account and will also belong to a post. And we will validate the uniqueness of the combination between the account and post. So each account can only make one vote on a particular post. So that will be based on the account ID and the post ID. And we will create a callback for after the vote has been created. So we'll increment vote, and then we'll also do a after destroy. So that would be to reduce the number of votes. So these methods will be called after the vote is created or after it is destroyed. So the purpose of these methods will be to update the total votes in our post. So we have a value on the post to record the total votes. So they post.find, and we'll use the ID of that post from the vote, and then we will increment the total votes on that post. So we'll just confirm this, we'll double check our schema file, and we can see here that we don't have the total value, so let's just rename that. And then finally we will call a .save on that increment. So in this case we're incrementing the upvotes, the total number of upvotes, and we call the save method on that. And we're doing the same thing when we downvote. We want to reduce the number of votes, and we will save that post also. But one thing we need to remember here is that a vote can also be a downvote or a upvote. So we need to we need to actually determine whether it is a upvote or downvote and then update the field accordingly. So in this case, we will pass the field name into the statement below. So we'll say self.upvote, which will be a Boolean value, so that's either true or false, and then we will determine the field we're updating based on that true or false value. So now I will create a new controller for our votes Call this votes controller.rb. And we will add a new method called create. So this will be the main method that we use in this controller. So later we will be calling this method from our JavaScript, but for now we'll just set up the default code for this. The basic code just to get the overall structure of this working. So we want to be capturing the parameter like it's passed in. So we want to capture the upvote. This will be a true or false value. So we'll whitelist some parameters. Set this to private. So it'll require that the vote is passed in, and we'll permit some fields. So we want to permit the account ID. No, actually we want to permit the post ID that gets passed in. We'll also permit the upvote, which will be a true or false value. So we can move this one down here. We don't need to call it directly. So we've got the upvote and the post ID. And then for the account ID, we will set that automatically based on the current account. So that's going to be the signed in user at this point. So just grab the ID from that, and then we will run a .save. So if the vote is saved correctly, then we want to render the JavaScript file. But before we do that, we should check to see if an existing vote is already made. So we do have the validation in place to prevent duplicate votes, but in this case we want to decide if we are actually creating a new post or we are deleting an existing post. So if a post is already made, say for example we upvote a post and then we click the upvote button again, we want to actually remove that vote. It's good to determine if a vote is already made before we do this. So let's run a condition, and we will say if the existing vote, and we're calling the .size method, and the reason for that here is that we are using a vote.where, so it could be selecting multiple votes, but realistically there's only going to be one vote here. But we can basically just say that if a vote exists, we want to destroy it, otherwise we want to try and create a new vote. So if the new vote is being created, then we will say if it can be saved, then we'll handle some criteria based on that. So once our vote is saved, then we want to load the post, and that post will give us some information such as how many votes have been made up until this point, upvotes, downvotes. So we will load that after we save. And we're going to reuse this value, this post ID, several times here. So I've just assigned it to a variable at the top of our method. So we can we can set the values for the total upvotes and downvotes here at this point. So we're not quite sure how we're outputting this information yet, but this is useful information to have right now. So we'll just set this for now, and we'll come back and improve on this method later. So for this code, we can actually move it outside of this conditional. So it doesn't actually matter whether our vote is saved or not. We still want to get these values and update our view. So we will just record the true or false based on if our vote is saved or not. So we'll assign that to a success instance variable. And at this point, we can also wrap this code in a respond to block. I don't think it's essential, but I'm going to do it for now anyway. I'm expecting this to be handled by JavaScript, this method. So we'll be calling this when we click on a link. So the page shouldn't reload, this should just be happening in the background. So we'll indent our code to make it a little bit cleaner. So we are rendering a partial here for the create method. So let's create this in our view. We'll create a new folder called votes, and in here then we will create a javascript.erb file. So just to determine if we've got this working, we will do a console log. So that will output to the browser console in the development tools. So we'll just make a note here of what we're trying to achieve in this file. So we want to update the total votes on the view for that particular post. And we'll come back to that file later. So now let's go back to our list view for posts. So this is the partial that gets loaded for each post. And if we look back at Reddit, what we want to achieve is this upvote and downvote links here like this. So these buttons that let us upvote or downvote the post. So let's create the markup for this first. And since we are using Bootstrap in our build, we will use the Bootstrap classes to help us with the layout. So in this case, we're creating a one column layout on the left, and that's going to be where our links are for upvoting or downvoting. And then on the right, we will have the details of the post. And we will use Font Awesome to provide us with icons to give us the up arrow and the down arrow. We will have an additional class for the upvote and downvote. So we want to anchor some JavaScript off these later. So our spacing is a little bit big here, so let's correct this. Let's keep this one column for all screen sizes. So now I'm going to add the Font Awesome style sheet to the header of our page. And I'm going to do this the easy way, which is just to drop in the script. Now you could do this using Yarn, and I've done that in other videos, but I just want to keep it very simple in this video. So going back now to our partial, let's change the classes on the icons, and we can see that our Font Awesome is now working. So between these two arrows, this up and down arrow, we want to have a number here. So this number will be how many upvotes this post has already got. So I'm going to tweak our layout a little bit here. So I want these up and downwards arrows to fill the full space. So let's add some styles to our style sheet. And we can create a new style sheet for this. In fact, I will create one for the posts. And the posts will also have the upvote, downvote styles. We're going to set our links for the upvote, downvote. It's going to be blocks, which should fill the space. And we'll set some padding. And we can add a background color and see how that looks. And we will set our color of the links to black. And we'll also add some styling for a active class. Now because we're using the CSS file for this, we can embed our classes in this way. So you can also do this in just pure CSS, in which case you would just have this all in one line. So it would be .upvote, .active if you want to add styles for that. So this could be improved. I'm not going to go too deep into the styling of this, but we will center align the content, text align center. And in fact, we can actually add that center line onto the div element itself. So let's add a background color to this and see how it looks. It's a little bit better, but there is a spacing at the top and bottom. And for the sake of this video, I'm going to keep the styling really simple. So I'm going to remove this colored background. So this will just remain on white. But what I do want to do is have a hover state on these links. So let's add that now to our style sheet. Once we hover, we want the color to be, so we want the color to stand out against the background. We also want to have a cursor here. So we want to show the user that these can be clicked. So let's tweak the color. Actually, I want to have this a red color. So let's use the very basic red color. So we reload the page and see how this looks. And already that's looking pretty good. So I want to make this number have bold text, so make it stand out a little bit. So we can do this by adding a class. So now let's begin to think about how we can get this functioning, this upvote and downvote. So when we go back to our view, so this is our list view. So in here we'll add a data attribute, and we want to record the ID of the post. So let's output the post ID, and we can actually wrap this whole section in a div, and we'll give it a, move the data ID onto that wrapping div, and we'll have a ID here for the vote actions. So this vote ID will be different every time, this vote actions ID. So it's based on the post ID. And we're going to add a new method here for the score. And right now we can just have it returning a 0. So by default, the score on any post will be 0. So the score really will be the difference between the upvotes and downvotes. So let's add a note here to remind ourselves later. So by default, once we call this post.score, it will be 0 to begin with. So in order to simplify things on the front end, I'm going to add jQuery to this build. So just to make things really easy for us. So now within our application.js, I'm going to add a require, and we're going to include a vote.js file. So just create this new folder first of all for includes, and then we'll add the new file in here, so vote.js. So we're going to ensure that jQuery is loaded, and I will run a console.log just to ensure that we have jQuery loaded properly before we go any further. So we can see that jQuery is loaded now. So let's go back to our file, and in here we will begin by grabbing the vote. So that's a wrapper class around this. And then within that wrapper class we have the .upvote. So in this case we will use jQuery to add a event handler on the click method. And once that happens, then we will, well, first let's just add a console log again to output the post ID. So we can grab this from the parent element, and there's a data attribute there for the ID that we've added. So let's see if we are getting this value before we go too much further. So say post update for post, and we'll pass the ID. So let's make sure that we're getting the value before we keep going. So let's reload this, click it, and we can see here that it's undefined right now. So we go back to our markup, and we haven't actually got the data ID. So I thought we had that, but we maybe removed it earlier. So let's add this back in, post.id, and we're seeing the number now, which is great. So that's working. So now let's run the .ajax method, so the jQuery AJAX method, and we'll set the URL for this. So we haven't actually set up a URL for this yet. So if we go to our routes file, let's get one added for this. So let's make a post method. So this is going to point to post/vote. So let's add our URL to the AJAX method, and we will set the method to be post. And we'll pass in the data. So in this case, we want to pass in the post ID, which we have set above. And we can also add a method for when this is successful. And we will just run a console log once this is complete. And since we have passed the values from JavaScript, we can actually remove this vote params, and we can just assign the value of post based on the params directly. Now we could actually have done this using a remote form, so that would just pass the form details via AJAX, but I think since we have so many posts on the page, so many upvote, downvote buttons, I think it's just better to handle this via JavaScript rather than lots and lots of forms on the page. So just looking now, once we click the button, you can see that the insert method is happening, so it's recording the vote. It's just that our view is not updating the totals right now. So the method's getting called correctly, the vote's being created, and the totals have been updated on the post too. So the backend part is working pretty well so far, but the views on the front end are not reflecting the new votes that are being created. So one thing we're missing here is the upvote value. Let's clean this up a little bit. So go back to our JavaScript, and we'll need to pass in the upvote. So that's going to be a true or false value. So we will create a new variable for this. So let's extend this JavaScript code. So this will run for both the upvote and the downvote, and then we will set the variable based on the class that is attached to the link we clicked. So in this case, we'll say has class upvote, and if it has a class, then it will be true. It is an upvote. Otherwise, it will be a downvote. So we'll test this out before we run it via AJAX. So I just want to output the value to make sure it's being set correctly. So let's test this out. And we can see that it is true. And when we click the downvote, it's false. So that's good, that's working, this part. So the values are being set correctly. So let's pass them in via AJAX. So that's already set. Now this should be passing in correctly. So going back to our JavaScript file now for the create.js.erb. So in here we want to actually update the view. So let's start by grabbing the vote actions ID. So it's going to be based on the post ID. So we want to get the value for the score and update that. So let's add a class for that. And we'll set the text within that element. So we'll output the score from that post. So going back to our model now, so let's try to actually set a score based on the total upvotes and downvotes. So we'll set a conditional to make sure that there is a vote made, and if no votes have been made, then we'll return the value of 0. So if votes have already been made, then we will check to see if an upvote is greater than 0, and if it is, then we will take the upvotes and subtract the downvotes, so we'll get the difference between the two. And then otherwise we will just return the downvotes, but in order to give this a negative value, we will just times it by -1, so that will give us a negative. So if there's one downvote and no upvotes, then we want to take that 1 and reverse it. So in this case, it looks like we have a problem with the naming. Let's go back and double check this. Undefined method total upvotes. So go back to our schema file and see how we've named this. And we have named this without the total underscore. So let's just update this quickly. Okay, and we're seeing a -1, and this other post has a 1. So it looks like the values are showing correctly, but yeah, they're being recorded correctly. When we reload the page, we should see the value, but we want to get it working on the front end too in real time. So let's try to get our JavaScript view working. I'm going to delete the total upvotes and downvotes, as we don't actually need to display those on the front end, but we do need to display the score. And it looks like I made a typo in the score selector, so it should have a dot in front of it to select the class, and that appears to be working now, but the active state isn't remaining. So we can see here that when we click it again, it is deleting the vote and it is correctly updating the votes, but on our view it's not showing correctly. So we just need to move this post selector outside of the conditional so that it also gets loaded once a post vote is deleted. So when we click this button, we need to show the active state so that we know what post we've upvoted or downvoted. So we've already styled it, so just to show how this works, once this class is added, it will be highlighted red. So let's add a helper method. So we'll say is upvoted, and we'll pass in the post. So let's create this method, and we'll also do the same for the downvote. So we'll go to our helpers folder and we will create a new helper for this. So let's create our methods within this. So is upvoted, and we're passing in a post. So the first thing we'll do here is ensure that the account is signed in. So only people who are signed in will have a vote. So we're going to load post IDs that we have upvoted from our account model, and then we will check to see if that's included, if this post ID is included. So we can probably optimize this further later, but I'm just trying to get something working on screen right now. So in here we want to load votes based on our account ID. So here we can say self.votes, and we'll pull this based on the upvote being true. And then we will just pluck the post ID from those entries. So this will create an array of post IDs that we have upvoted. And we'll do the same for posts that we have downvoted. So we'll grab those post IDs. So again, we will create an additional helper method for the downvotes. And we have an error here. It looks like we have a typo. So one thing we forgot to output here is the class name. So that was the reason we are calling this helper method. So just to debug this, I want to print these IDs to the Rails server. And we can see that we have got one post that we have upvoted. And after we upvote, it doesn't trigger it, so we have to reload the page. And now we have two IDs for posts. Our helper methods are only getting run once the page is loaded the first time. So the helper method won't really give us the active state once we click the link. We will need to do that using JavaScript. So let's just correct the name of this method being called. So now let's try to output the active state class. And we can move this conditional for the sign in into the same line. So we'll say if account signed in and the upvoted post IDs include this post ID, then we will display the active state. And we can see that this is working now for the upvote. So let's do the same for the downvote. Clean this up a little bit. Reload the page. So once you reload the page, it is working. Maybe this was cached, but it is working now. And I'm going to disable turbo links at this point. I've noticed this in a few other applications I've built, that I run into these caching issues with turbo links, and I'm not sure if it's something that I'm doing wrong, but I usually, unless I really need turbo links, I usually end up just removing it because it sort of gets around all these problems you run into. So let's go back to our JavaScript file. So this was once a vote is saved, we want to show the active state. So that link should stay red. So for both the upvote and downvote, we'll remove the active class if it's already set. So we can see that that is working. And then we want to set the correct state on the link that we clicked. So if we click the upvote and we want it to have a active class and stay red, and the same for the downvote. So we need some way to determine if the upvote was created or the downvote was created. And we can do that by setting an instance variable based on the action taken. So we'll call this one is upvote. and I will use the params that was passed into this method. So let's have a conditional based on this action. So if it's upvoted, then we want to highlight the upvote. And the same then for the downvote. So the behavior here is a little bit strange. And I think we've got some kind of issue in our code, so let's see what's going on with this. So it kind of feels like it's doing the opposite of what we're trying to achieve here. So it could be something to do with this is upvote value. And if we look at our Rails log, we can see that the upvote value is actually a string. So in this case, we need to be treating it like a string. And it appears to be working this time. It's actually going the right direction, the active state. So it's one step forward, but we do want to be able to click it and then unselect it again. So actually once we unselect by clicking the up arrow in this case, we want to go back to 0 votes, so therefore we shouldn't have any of these buttons being highlighted. So that's a different condition in this case. We want to detect if we're creating a new vote or we are actually destroying an old vote. So in this case, if new vote is true, then we will run this code which adds the classes, but if it's not a new vote, then we don't want to add the class for active. So we can use the existing vote variable here and see if that has any existing votes already. So if the existing vote is less than 1, then it will be a new record being created. And that appears to be working this time. So it looks like we are creating votes and deleting votes. So that's all working correctly at this point, storing the total value of the votes onto the post. So that's looking good. And the next thing we want to do then is order these posts based on the number of upvotes they have. So let's go back to our public controller. And this time we're going to sort the post, and we'll sort it by the score, so p.score in this case, or post.score. And you can see that it sorts it ascending by default, so the lowest value going upwards. But if we add a dot reverse to the end of that, then we will get the correct order that we're looking for. So let's copy and paste this into our communities show view. In here we also want to sort by the most popular posts. We'll add a limit here also, 20 posts. So let's click the upvote and reload the page. We'll see that it is now on the top. One thing we are still missing here is the upvote on this post details page. So let's take the same code that we used before, and I think it should pretty much work just by copying and pasting this in. So we have this 2-column layout again. So on the right side we will have our comments and our field for adding a comment and the post details. And then on the left side we have our upvote and our downvote. So we'll just correct these values. And we test it out. We can see that it's already got our vote stored. So it remembers that we have voted already. So we can click it and it updates. So that's working pretty well. So the last thing I want to include in our build then is the karma. So I want to add karma to the accounts, and basically how that will work is that when we have a post that gets upvoted by other users, we will then get points based on that upvote. So it's basically just a measure of credibility for a user's account, how good they are at creating good content. So let's create a migration and we'll add a karma value to the accounts table. So by default this will be 0 and it is a integer value. So we run the migration. So let's go to our vote model, and after create we will add a new method here. So it will be add karma, and it will be a lot like the methods above for increasing and decreasing votes. We are basically just incrementing the value for this karma within the account. First we will find that account based on the account ID attached to the vote. So we are increasing the value and then we are saving the value to the account. And I want to display this value at the top of the page, so that way we can see what our karma is when we are signed in. So we're going here to our header partial within layouts, and then we will just output the current account.karma. So let's test this out. And we should probably wrap this in a div. We'll give it a class of karma. And we can also add a little bit of style to this by adding a font awesome icon. So in this case we'll use the star icon, and I will make it yellow by using the text warning class. And we can float that. So we can play around with styles more to make this better, but I'm just doing something quite simple right now to make it look reasonably nice to the user on the front end. So while I tinker around with this, I just want to remind you guys that if you enjoy this content to subscribe to the channel and check out some of my other builds. I have multiple videos where I build different MVP platforms. So we're trying to get this aligned with the drop down menu. So I'm going to float this to the right. And I guess we can move this to the bottom. And we also need to have a margin to push the karma value down. And move that star to the right. So you could take this a lot further and really style this up. I'm just trying to make it look reasonable. And I think that's pretty good. It looks pretty decent. So let's click on a few posts to see if we can get this value incrementing. And it's not working here at the moment, which is a little strange, but let's have a look at our model. Yeah, we can see that the vote is being recorded, but the value is not going up. So let's have a look at what's going on here. Let's go back to our model. And I think we need to add the value to the increment. I think we missed that. So let's increment this by 1. Okay, it's setting the karma this time. reload the page, and then we get our number at the top. So let's try this on a few posts. And that's working, so that's pretty good. And just to finish it off, then we could output that value on the profile of that user. And we should also remove karma. So when we get a downvote, we are taking some of that karma away. Let's try that out. Reload, we've got 2 now, so that's working. Back to our profile, and we'll add the value to the profile just to finish this out. So we can just add this above the created date or our kick date as we have it here. So in here we'll output the profile.karma, and then we can also output the font awesome icon again. So FA star, and we want it to be yellow. And we can just put the words karma in front of this. So that's going to do it for this video. Thank you guys for following along and building the Reddit clone. I want to give a shout out to Scout APM for sponsoring this video. Scout APM makes it easy to debug your Ruby on Rails application, and it also helps to eliminate performance issues. Do check out their link in the description below where you get a 14-day free trial. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.